Good afternoon. I have the easiest job there is. Our distinguished next speaker does not want me to prolong it any longer, and she has done so many wonderful things that I'm afraid to mention one of them, but I would say that she's worked as a lifelong educator and a social justice foot soldier. Please join me in welcoming the distinguished Dr. Sybil Jordan Hampton.
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here again with this wonderful commission, and I'm going to try to make sure that I'm speaking into the mic. I thought when the mic wasn't up that we're going to do what children do in school and in college, and they say the 10-minute rule. That, you know, if nobody shows up or you can't use the mic, then everybody gets to go home. I'd like to begin with this quote. And it says, I have been in sorrow's kitchen and licked out all the pots. Then I have stood on the peaky mountain, wrapped in rainbows, with a harp and sword in my hands. For some reason, I'm having hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Just coming. Very challenging.
They want to see your face.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And they need a box. Sometimes when I go to speak, they put a box so I can stand on it. But I think for my presentation, we need to go back. And I'd like to take you back in my life, because I think that it will help you to understand how I feel and also the tenor of my remarks. I feel very sad. Every time I got ready to come today, I kept thinking what I feel about the current situation is I feel profoundly sad. In 1982, I lived and worked in New Rochelle, New York. And one day I received a letter inviting me to the 20th reunion of the Little Rock Central High School class of 1962. It was quite a surprise because in the 20 years since I had graduated, I had never heard anything about any class activities, and more importantly, I had not the smallest desire to do anything with any members of that class or even to put my foot in the school ever again. It made me feel like I was actually being invited back to the scene of a crime. In 1957, you remember that 9 brave young black students attempted to desegregate Little Rock Central High School, and they will forever be known and revered as the Little Rock Nine, and they were only able to go into the school after President Dwight David Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne to escort them. The world knew all the terrible things that happened because ABC, NBC, CBS, photographers and reporters from Lifetime, Ebony were here. And, you know, we listened to the radio then more than we saw TV. Most people couldn't afford TVs. But we knew what the violence was, and we knew how terrible the situation was. And then we remember that Arkansas's governor, Orville Faubus, decided at the end of the 1957-58 school year to close all the high schools for the 1958-59 school year in Little Rock, all high schools. He actually called into session the General Assembly in August of 1958. And they passed a number of laws. One of them was giving him permission to close the schools, and the citizens of the city of Little Rock actually went to the polls and voted to support that. But the other piece that is worth noting is that the legislature also passed an act making it possible for every white student who wanted to go to a private or religious school during that school year to be given the equivalent of the money that would have gone to public schools. And I will say to you, that links with what we're doing right now. The link is there. The initial use of what we now have in the LEARNS Act was what Orville Faubus initiated with our General Assembly in 1958 to make it possible for white students to have alternatives during the year, the lost year. The federal courts in May of 1959 finally put their foot down, they jarred the floor, and insisted that the schools had to be reopened. The Little Rock School Board, and this is really important to think about, from 1957 to 1971, the way any black student attended Little Rock Hall, Little Rock Central, or the vocational high school was through the use of the pupil placement law. Every one of us who attended was hand-selected by the school board after going through a gauntlet of psychological tests, evaluation of our academic records, looking at our character, I presume. And so in 1959, the school board, using the pupil placement law, made the first decision, and that was to only readmit those who were members of the Little Rock Nine. Of that group of students who still would have been eligible, needed to come back and finish the degree, 4 students were readmitted. Carlotta Walls, Jefferson Thomas, Elizabeth Edford, and I'm blanking. Jefferson Thomas. And only 2 of the students needed to return. Elizabeth had enough credits in order to complete and did GED type work. And the other young woman had health problems and was going to be homeschooled. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund protested this and went back to court. So on the first day of school, no one attended, none of the black students. Carlotta was still in summer school. Jefferson started on the second day, and Elizabeth came with him so that he would not be there alone, although she was not planning to attend. The courts, at the end of August, declared that they had to readmit more students, and so there were a small group of us who were interviewed. And the decision was made to add 3 additional students. So during the 1958-59 school year, there were 5 students who attended Little Rock Central High School. Carlotta and Jeff from the Little Rock Nine, and people know that. Frank Henderson and Sandra Johnson were in the 11th grade, and I was the youngest. I was 15 years old, and I was placed in the 10th grade, and I was alone. I can tell you that on the first day, we went on a Friday. We started school on a Friday, oddly enough. But I remember because my father was a postman, and postmen went to work early in the morning, and Daddy stayed home that day. And he had breakfast with me and my brother and my mother, and he was praying after breakfast, and he was talking to me about being strong, and he talked to me about the 23rd Psalm, and he wanted me to remember, that as I faced this day, not knowing what was going to happen. We arrived at school. We were driven to school by Reverend J.F. Henderson, and some people in the room know him. He was pastor of Allison Presbyterian, and Frank was his son. We arrived at the school. There was nobody outside. I mean, it was absolutely quiet. It was absolutely still, and that was calming. But we were driven to school every day of those 3 years by some parent because it would be too dangerous to walk. We got into the building, and we were met by the principal and by the assistant principal. The hallways were quiet because school had started earlier, so there would not be anybody in the hallways when we got there. And Mrs. Huckabee, who was very, very gracious, took us into her office, helped us to understand our schedules, and then she escorted us to our homeroom. My homeroom was on the first floor in the northeast corner. And as we walked, I noted that there was a door outside, and I was relieved because I had been very concerned. If something happens to me, how can I get out and remove myself? My homeroom teacher was standing at the door, and to my surprise, she just pointed me to a seat. And I was not introduced to the class. And I thought, she's not going to be my ally. I'm 15 years old, and I'm by myself. When the bell rang, I recognized that I was going to go into the hallway for the first time alone. And I was apprehensive, but my parents had said to me, if you show fear, people will keep pressing you.
That's right.
They said, you should hold your head up, you should look calm, you should look straight ahead, but listen and be aware of what's going on around you. And as I started to walk in the hallway, I realized there was this murmuring, and the murmuring actually was, here comes one of the ends. And as that went through the hallway, people moved to the sides so that the middle of the hallway was clear for me to walk down the middle of the hallway alone. This didn't go on for very long, but what happened on the other side of that was truly shocking. No one spoke to me. No one looked at me. No one greeted me. No one in my homeroom ever spoke to me other than to indicate after the Pledge of Allegiance that it was my turn to read the Bible. It was stunning to believe that no one would look me in the eye. But what was happening is that we were being shunned. And the message was, you don't belong here, we don't want you here, and we're going to treat you as if you're not here. The only time my voice was ever heard in my homeroom was when I read the Bible, and I always read the 121st Psalm. I will lift my eyes to the hills, from whence cometh my strength. My strength comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And I believe that. By law, by Arkansas law, those of us who were black students could not attend any sporting activities. We could not become members of any clubs or organizations in the school. And when graduation rolled around in May 1962, I actually felt like I was going to fly away. I was so ecstatic. I had done what I had come to do, and that was to be a successful student. I stayed in school. I didn't get kicked out. But most of all, I was proud to be a foot soldier who was standing proudly on the shoulders of the warrior Little Rock Nine. And I remember what my parents said, the generals and the warriors, their names are always known. But the wars never get won unless the foot soldiers who are willing to be the unrecognized, the unknown, do their job. So those 3 years had really gone by, but they were all the same. I was shunned, I had been so alone, and I was treated as if I was a ghost. I was invisible, but mostly I was treated as if I didn't matter. But on graduation day, I was thrilled. Strangely enough, Quigley Stadium, which I had gone into as a student in my elementary school and junior high school because it was the place that all the schools used for activities. But never had I gone there as a student at Little Rock Central High School. Quigley Stadium was the site of graduation, and the stadium was ringed with police. And only my parents could come. Only our parents could come. And I was the only black student, and our class had a graduating number of 544 students. I walked across the stage with a smile. My parents said to me, "You must always smile. You must smile, never cry, smile." And Mr. Matthews handed me my diploma, and somebody yelled out, it had been so still and quiet, "Well, there goes Black Beauty." And I went back to my seat, and people around me were saying, "Oh my goodness, who they were going to miss," and blah, blah, what up? And I thought, I'm not missing anybody. I cannot wait to get away from you, you know. This is it. And then, 20 years later, I'm invited to the class reunion. And that was a dilemma. And I thought, I really made an incredible sacrifice. But perhaps time has brought about some type of change. So I called my parents and I said, "I'm going to fly home and we're going to go to the banquet together." Because remember, our parents were not permitted to come into the school under any circumstances. And so I thought, my parents will have the opportunity to come and be with me. And I said to them, "See the cast of characters." And so we went, and we were met at the door by a guy who was in my homeroom who had never spoken to me before in my life. And he said, "Oh, Sybil Jordan, it's so wonderful to see you." And he greeted my parents and he said, "But I have something to say, and that is the rest of the classmates feel uncomfortable, and so they don't want to sit with you. And so we'll be seated at a table by ourselves, just the three of us." And I was thinking, I flew from New York for what? And I was rolling my eye, and my mother was the queen of the eye. And it was, we are going in, and we are going to do what we're doing. And I thought, yes, I'm coming to take my place. I'm coming to claim my space this evening. Well, I learned something wonderful about that guy, Ron Hughes, from my class, because he sat with us. Other students during the course of the evening came over and spoke to me for the first time. And so I thought the power of one is really powerful. And I actually got an award for being the most educated. What was shocking is that at the end of the evening, when I was really ready to go, I'd forgotten they were having a sock hop. And of course, people were saying, "You ought to come, you didn't get to dance with us when we were in high school." And I thought, my mother gave me the eye, and I stayed a little while for the sock hop. And it was actually fun. And I thought, you don't bring yourself to a place if you don't do what's, you have to do what you have to do. And it was quite lovely. But when we were going home in the car, I said to my parents, "You can legislate, you can pass laws, but the laws do not change people's hearts." And that's the piece that I think we often forget about this whole situation, is that what we are talking about today has everything to do with what's in people's hearts. And I told my parents, I believe that what I did was the right thing. And I'm glad I came back today. But I'm shocked to see, in some ways, how little has changed. But it had reaffirmed my commitment that I was going to continue to work to grow roses in concrete. And so we find ourselves in a place where there's a lot of conversation about, young people say to me, they're being told that these are the worst of times, and I tell them, au contraire. You never rode in the back of a bus. You never had to go to any place where you were told that if it didn't say colored, you couldn't go to the bathroom or drink. I said, no, as usual, this is the worst of times and the best of times. Those two things really do coexist. I would say that we could not have known in '59 when I went to Central how much work there was to be done. And we couldn't have known that the issues of desegregation and adequate and equitable resources for public schools would and continue to be problems in this society, but they have. Yeah. I've lived down south and up south. And I would not have believed that after the end of Jim Crow and the beginning of the Civil Rights era, there would be more segregation in these United States today than there was. African-American writer and radical feminist professor and civil rights activist Audre Lorde was asked in 1992 if she agreed that racism in America was dying out. In response, Lorde warned that when something dies, it doesn't just fade away. It fights to the death, desperately clinging to life, and goes out ugly. And what I will say to you today is that what we are seeing is another iteration of dying slowly and going out ugly. We must remember that there was the Reconstruction period and then there was Jim Crow. We've had the Civil Rights era and Barack Obama as President of the United States, and now we have this. So that there is this cycle as we move slowly on the 5 million year journey, I think, to a better world. We can certainly attest to the fact that after the death of Jim Crow, segregation, inequality and injustice in America is slow going and decidedly ugly. And as teenagers who were committed to equality and desegregation, those of us who were involved in the school desegregation struggle made great, great sacrifices because we felt that we were going to make a difference and the world was going to be different for us. And may I say to you, I have had a wonderful life. And I've had incredible things happen in my life, including returning to Little Rock and becoming president of the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation. And so that I've been able to do in my career, and many, many other young people, things that I didn't even know existed to do. And so we can't lose sight of that as we struggle with the fact that we haven't gone as far as we hoped we'd gone, and that we feel that we're on the precipice of losing. I don't think we're on the precipice of losing the battle. I think that we're just in this ugly place, because look at all the ads on TV. The ads on TV are so fascinating as you see these couples who might be Asian and Anglo, African American, these little children who are in, families that they're biracial. These ads would not be on television if that was not a sign of the way in which the society is moving. So I think that we need to really kind of hold ourselves together, and I don't make pronouncements about whether I think this is the worst time or the best time, and I'm certainly not angry, because it takes energy and positivity to do the work. And that's what I had every day that I went to Central High School when I was 15 years old, 16, 17, and always in the 10th grade alone, because the wonderful people at the school board thought I was a troublemaker and decided to punish me. by placing me in 10th grade by myself. And it's because they did to me what they would never have done to their own children, because they saw me as not being like their children. And that is a central part of the problem, and that was spoken about before, that until we see all the faces in this room and make the connection about the race that we belong to, which is the human race.
That's right. That's right. The human race.
I would say to you that there are two things that we probably really need to, I want to have us think about. One of them is that there's a book that I want to recommend to you, and it's called Overturning Brown, The Segregationist Legacy of the Modern School Choice Movement. Overturning Brown, The Segregationist Legacy of the Modern School Choice Movement. It's written by my colleague Steve Suitts, S-U-I-T-T-S. And he says, by the beginning of 2019, more than half of the 50 states had enacted a variety of voucher programs diverting public funds to private schools and in some places to homeschooling, like us soon, often for the purported purpose of improving the education of low-income African American and Hispanic students. These programs use state appropriations or tax credits to divert public monies to support self-governing schools, often with few requirements or restrictions. Since the 1960s, white flight from urban public school systems, in places like Atlanta and all, have maintained and extended segregated patterns in private tax-exempt schools and in suburban public schools. And on both sides of the Mason-Dixon line, many white middle-class parents had escaped the mandates of school desegregation by moving into suburban neighborhoods where restricted patterns, racial isolation, and economics provided virtually segregated schools. And we can see that as we look around the state of Arkansas. In Overturning Brown, Suitts makes the argument that virtually every policy, every argument used by current school choice advocates were first used in the cause of furthering racial segregation in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We are urged to more closely scrutinize choice policies currently and those employed in the South to get around desegregation. The Learns Act. What we know about the Learns Act in its first year is important to think about. 90% of the students who were able to get the grants from the Learns Act were not in public schools in the prior school year. 90% of the students who were able to get those grants for this current school year were not in public schools. When school choice began in the 70s, started in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it was designed, the charter school movement was designed to develop models in small settings that would then be translated into new practices in public schools. That was the mantra at that point. And now we see that the very children whom we thought, or whom it is purported, will benefit from the voucher program, how many of them are in the 10% who weren't already out of the public schools last year? And it is purported that some of the private schools have begun to be able to raise their tuitions because the parents are now receiving that $6,000, and therefore, so it is, I think it's really very important for us to be aware of what actually is happening and to try and be less aggravated and angry about what's happening, and to be as smart as the Women's Emergency Committee was. When the schools reopened in 1959, the Chamber of Commerce placed an ad prior to the school opening in the major newspapers, the Democrat and the Gazette, stating that it was inevitable that we were going to have to open the schools, that we had to follow the federal court rulings, even though they were not correct. And that the city needed to go along with and do what it had to do until they were able to come to a place to get the correct ruling. Can you imagine what would have happened if the Chamber of Commerce had put in the paper, this is the right thing to do, because those young people deserve to have choices and high-quality education. But to boldly state, and in the local newspapers, the Chamber of Commerce, that we're doing this because we are going to economically fall on our faces if we don't do what we have to do. It is in that type of response that you undermine, and that's what led to people not being in my face, being in our faces, but shunning us. Because it was very clear that the 101st Airborne should never come into Little Rock again. Because the economy was suffering. This is a conundrum. What will we do? But something has to be done for the following reason. When on November 26th, the grades were published for public schools in Arkansas, 334 out of 1,035 schools in Arkansas received grades of D and F. And those are the students who are expected to be able to take advantage of the vouchers and go to the private and religious schools. Well, you know, private schools are not taking those D and F students, nor can the parents pay the difference between the 6,000 X dollars. And I would thank you, Elise Hampton, for doing such a wonderful job of helping us to understand about the LEARNS Act. So I don't need to talk about that, but what I would like to say is this. Here are the schools in Little Rock and their grades. Friendship Aspire Academy, Little Rock Middle School, D. Friendship Aspire Academy, Little Rock Elementary, F. Central High School, Little Rock, C. Man Magnet Middle School, D. Pulaski Heights Middle School, C. Bale Elementary School, F. Brady Elementary School, F. McDermott Elementary School, F. Carver Steam Magnet Elementary School, D. Forest Park Elementary School, A. Gibbs Magnet School, C. Western Hills Elementary School, F. Jefferson Elementary School, A. MLK Elementary School, F. Pulaski Heights Elementary School, C. Stevens Elementary School, F. Washington Elementary School, F. Williams Magnet School, C. Terry Elementary School, D. Fulbright Elementary School, C. Baseline Elementary School, F. Mapleville Elementary School, F. Otter Creek Elementary School, D. Wakefield Elementary School, D. Mapleville Middle School, F. Don Roberts Elementary School, A. Forest Heights STEM Academy, B. Pinnacle Valley Middle School, B. Cloverdale Middle School, F. Watson Elementary, F. Chico Elementary, D. J.A. Fair K-8 Preparatory School, F. Lisa Academy West Elementary School, D. Lisa Academy Arkansas Hybrid School, D. Arkansas Virtual Academy Elementary School, F. Arkansas Virtual Academy Middle School, D. Arkansas Virtual Academy High School, D. East STEM Elementary School, D. East STEM East Village Elementary Public Charter School, D. Jacksonville Lighthouse Elementary Academy, which is a charter school, F. Jacksonville Lighthouse High School Academy, D. Exalt Academy of Southwest Little Rock, D. Mills Middle School, D. Mills University Studies High School, D. College Station Elementary School, D. Harris Elementary School, F. North Little Rock High School, D. North Little Rock Middle School, D. North Little Rock Middle School 6th grade campus, D. 7th Street Elementary School, F. 4 of the 5 KIPP Delta schools earn grades of D and F. There is a Founders Classic Academy, I guess in Little Rock Online, F. Founders Classic Academics, D of West Little Rock. Little Rock Hall STEAM Magnet High School, D. Parkview Magnet, C. Little Rock West High School of Innovation, D. When you see these grades, when you understand that so many of the lowest grades are in the elementary schools, what on earth do we think is going to happen afterwards?
That's right.
So that money through the vouchers and the money that also goes to the charter schools. So there are 2 sources of money in our state that are flowing from the public schools. So many of the charter schools are not doing well. When you see the grades of the schools in Bentonville and Rogers, and in a number of small communities, A's and B's and C's. And when you see that in Delta communities, Elaine, they were under state supervision now, and the group that they wanted to bring in to take over, run schools in Little Rock that are failing. But we have to, I think, remember that one of the things that is going on now that I find simply revolting is that in the history and evolution of public education in the United States of America, the public good was at the center. We are allowing people in this state to say that what parents want is at the center. It is bizarre. The use of public money cannot be driven by what parents want versus what is the public good. And I keep saying to Baker Curris, why are there not people saying, let's put the public back in public schools? And let's elevate the conversation in this community about the reason that public schooling has been the salvation of our democracy. Because remember, in the beginning of this country, the schools were private schools. They were run by churches, and they were for males. And over time, as these notions of democracy and building healthy societies and families that could thrive and in the society, it became apparent that there had to be another source of schooling. The federal government gave land to the new states to build public schools, not just public colleges and universities. Public land was given by the federal government to ensure that there would be schools, because if we don't take care of the seed corn, our children are the seed corn. And nobody seems to be talking about the fact that so many of our children are failing. And these are poor children who, it's not on a black-white continuum. It is that children who are in areas that are poor, and more children who are in areas that are poor in Arkansas will be in failing schools, because if more and more people, including homeschoolers, take vouchers, there's going to be less and less money for the schools. Teachers won't be able to make $50,000 because the money is not going to be available. So that my concern is that we have to stop exclaiming. And we have to stop being angry. Because people who want to get over like fat rats want us getting red in the face and carrying on rather than making a plan and working a plan. People in this state who care about our children. People in Little Rock who care about these children. The number of schools that are D&F schools make me want to weep. And when you see the children, we went, Dr. Terrence Roberts of the Little Rock 9 and I went to one of the schools last week on Thursday, and in came all of these kids, and they were just so out of focus. You know, I mean, they didn't have the skills to sit and listen. There was just so much wiggling, and, you know, I was a little girl who at 4, 5, and 6 knew how to sit still. I had education in 2 excellent school systems. The all-black schools that I went to prior to going to Central, and Central, both of those schools were great places, and I got a great education in those places. But we now have children who are not in a position to get a great education. And guess what? They come from many dysfunctional circumstances, and it is shameful that we do not have universal pre-K in Little Rock. Because where there is universal pre-K, you have an opportunity to do something to ready the children who are coming to school unready, and you have an opportunity to also educate the parents, because if there's one place parents come with their children, it is to preschool. And so, now that I have ranted, and I hope I'm not ranting, but I really believe that we have to look at these hard statistics so that we will understand that politics is run amok here. You know, people say to me, you should go into politics. I said, that's where the least amount of good is happening. But those of us who are not in politics, but those of us who really care, have to begin having the conversation of what does it mean to have public schools? And what does it mean to have the public in public schools supplanted by a P called parents? That is a very, very important question, because nobody seems to ever raise the question of, excuse me, parents are important, but the United States of America uses public money to support young people, and so let us put public back in its rightful place in this society, and let us as a public put our hands together across all of the fault lines and do what the Women's Emergency Committee did, and that is think out of the box and outfox those who think that they are going to take all of this money. The charter school money, by the way, goes to private corporations. It is a way of privatizing public education with no accountability. I have been asked on several occasions to come and help children in charter schools who don't fit because they need someone to love them and nurture them and whatever, or they're going to be kicked out. Not one child can be kicked out of a public school. And that we in Arkansas and in America are funding educational institutions to do what they want to do, any way they want to do it, and to not be able to educate difficult children or children who have special education needs, is a sign that we have lost our minds, and that we have no idea that you cannot build a future great America on a weak base where the majority of your children who do not have parents who have gone to college and university and nurture them are going to be interested in hip-hop, rap, guns, and understanding that they're on the Titanic. knowing that they're on the Titanic and deciding that they are going to sing and dance every moment before the Titanic hits the rock. Thank you.
Do we have a couple of questions for Dr. Hampton before we start the panel? We'll take 2 questions and then we'll, Ms. Judy Green. Good morning.
My name is Judy Green, and I wanted to thank Dr. Hampton for all that valuable information that she's given. A lot of us don't know about,
Yes.
but I wanted to reiterate that I was a product of the Central High School crisis. That was my senior year in high school. Little Rock 9 were my classmates. We were cheated out of our whole year of school. And Dr. T.J. Rainey built a school in West Little Rock for Central High School students. And Philanthropist College, which is now Philanthropist University, offered the seniors at Horace Mann an opportunity to finish our high school units there. And we took regular college exam, we took regular college courses. All of the hours that we had that did not make up, whatever was the balance that made up our high school units, went towards our high school units, and the rest of it went toward our freshman year in college. And I just want to say, I give Philanthropist College all the praise for what they have done. There were 6 of us who went to Philander and finished our high school units that year. I just want to let you all know that there were a whole lot of us there were 200 of us in that graduating class that year.
90% of the white students were able to go to school that year. 50% of the African American students were able to go to school. So there were young people who went into the military because they were old enough. There were some people, there were innumerable people who did not finish high school but went into the workforce. So, yeah.
And a lot of them went back and graduated with the class behind us. Thank you.
Dr. Hampton, I just want to thank you so much for your bravery, your courage to move past that and become the woman that you are today and to us.
Thank you.
I do have a question and a comment when you were talking about with the privatization and everything. I want everybody to realize that when money goes from a public school, say for instance, like she was talking about a student who was kicked out of a public school and goes to a charter, the other school districts can accept them back. But as of October 1, when that money begins to be deciphered out, the charter schools kick those students out knowing that they can keep that money. So they can kick those kids out of school. And so those kids are coming back to those districts without the money. And so these monies, I want everyone to, if you have not, go back and listen and read up on charter school privatization, especially when Judge Wendell Griffin spoke about these hedge funds, because they are privately being monitored and funneled through these hedge funds. And so economically, going back to what you were talking about earlier about the economics of the dismantling of public schools, and that's where we're headed. So I want everybody, I admonish everybody to keep reading, sign up for subscriptions, whatever you can, because it's not only going to affect the children, it's going to affect us all eventually. So thank you so much. Thank you very much.